Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Lighthouse Sessions. I'm excited. I have my new friend, Hiten Sonpal, with me today. Hiten, why don't you just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do, and then we're going to talk about that glorious warehouse behind you.
Sure. So I'm the new CEO of Rise Robotics. I've been with the company a little less than 2 years. I joined Rise to take Rise to its next stage of growth. The company is an MIT affiliated startup, and the founding team, three of whom went to MIT, decided that they wanted to build an exosuit. So they started down that process and then realized that the motion technology to make the exosuit move just didn't exist. So, being engineers from MIT, they decided to invent it. And they invented this new technology that replaces hydraulic systems that we call beltrolics. It's three times as fast as hydraulics, three times as efficient, and three times as durable. And after they had invented this tech, they realized that rather than build the exosuit market, they could just disrupt the existing hydraulics market, which is $750 billion a year, and has an impact of far more than that on the economy. So they made a pivot, and then they decided to hire me, and I'm basically helping them commercialize their tech and get it to market at scale.
I love that. And by the way, I would have voted for the exoskeleton. My goal in life, I have two boys. They're both really nerdy smart. I'm like, when you grow up, you got to build dad a robotic exoskeleton. So Iron Man was a big influence in our house. But let's talk about hydraulics, because I think that's when you think about it, they're everywhere. I grew up on a farm, so my version of hydraulics is hoses breaking when you least needed them to break, and spraying everywhere, and loss of pressure. Honestly, it was not meant to be used on farms where you've got grit and dirt just waiting to get into the system, right?
Yes, I mean, it is, well, it was until we showed up. It was the state of the art, right, to move heavy loads. And that's why it's done so well and it's been around for a while. But we've stumbled on something better. And before I get into that and why it's better, uh, I do want to agree with kind of your assessment, which is that maintenance is like one of those key Achilles heels of hydraulic systems.
Yeah.
Your stuff is always leaking. You have these failure modes that you can't see before they happen. Hoses can burst,
Yeah.
and there's downtime. It's not easy downtime. It's messy downtime. You're scrambling to get things fit, and you've got to go get oil, and you've got to, if you're replacing something, you have to get the oil out. And the oil is hazardous, so you don't really want to get it on you. And if it gets in the ground, well, that's not great. And so you've got all of these issues with that. But then what a lot of folks don't realize is there's so much value being left on the table because these systems are inherently slow. They can't go very fast. And so the productivity of the system is often limited by what the hydraulic system can do. And finally, the inefficiency. So there's the high operating cost. If you have a hydraulic system that's being powered by, say a diesel pump, you're throwing away a lot of energy, or diesel engine, you're throwing away a lot of energy in the diesel engine, and then you're throwing a lot in the pump, and you're throwing a lot in moving the liquid around. And so these systems are highly, highly inefficient, typically in the 20 to 30% efficiency. So those are the challenges that exist today.
I love it. And my favorite word is disruption. You can't have innovation unless you're disrupting. So let's talk a little bit about your journey to becoming the CEO. So you've got quite the background in engineering. For what it's worth, nerds are worshipped in our household. So what put you on this path to working with robotics? Because honestly, I think I'm questioning my life choices right now.
Well, I think one of the things about nerds, and this is true for me as well, is that we often like to, as you mentioned, I think before we started talking, we have these diverse interests, and we like to do various different things and learn new things as we go about it. And so most nerds inherently have this growth mindset. Often it's limited in tech, and for me, it just happened to be a little bit beyond that. So I wanted to know not just the engineering, but multiple engineering disciplines, and then not just multiple engineering disciplines, but what made them successful. And so I've been growing my muscle. I started off as a computer engineer. I understood software, I understood electrical. Eventually, I was managing a team of mechanical engineers. So I grew that muscle. And then I was a program manager. So I was thinking about schedules and product development and product management and manufacturing and operations. And then once I had that breadth of experience, I had the opportunity to be a chief product officer and a chief strategy officer. So I started thinking about those. And then while I was doing that, I had to pick up sales. I had to pick up sales as a skill set and marketing as a skill set. And then at that point, I had basically all of the competencies to be CEO. So it was just me being nerdy, just about a slightly different set of things.
I love that because I think a lot of visionary entrepreneurs, we don't wake up and go, I'm going to become this. It's just we follow our curiosity and it pulls us where it pulls us. So I'm fascinated. Now, you mentioned that before we hit record, you mentioned that you took some classes at MIT and you were deeply inspired by a couple of those, especially about pricing. What was your biggest takeaway from that?
So the pricing class was really interesting, right? So a lot of the folks that show up at these MIT week-long offsite seminars and so on and training sessions, where it's very intense and a lot is getting packed into a week, and a lot is being packed into a week at the executive level. Often, most of those people didn't have technical backgrounds. I'd say maybe only 10% of them were engineers, or had some sort of math-related background. And so when this pricing exercise came about, where they basically described the market segments, they described the product, they described the competition, and then they gave us a spreadsheet that actually had a model behind it of all the people and the buying decisions that were happening in the background. So it was a very complex model. And then they said, hey, we want you to pick the optimal price for these products. So at that point, I was like, this is a math problem. I should be able to do well at it, right? And so I just jumped in and just like other people did, and we tried to guess prices. And I think my guess was in the top 10% of the folks who were there, right? But the team that won first place didn't have any of that background. It was just it was a friendly contest, right? So the team that won didn't really have that background, and the instructor asked them, "What did you do?" And they sheepishly said, "Well, we just tried a bunch of things until we found the best price." And that was a powerful insight, that it it was a pattern that exists elsewhere, but to see it applied here in a non-engineering context was very interesting. Basically, the what he was saying was, you don't know that you have pricing right until you've tested it.
Yeah.
Right. And that's so intuitive once I heard it. Because an engineer knows a product isn't done until you've tested it. Like that,
Yeah.
we get trained that, right? You can design something, but you actually have to go test it.
Yeah.
And so what this spreadsheet had done was made the cost of testing free.
Ah.
Right. And that was an insight I didn't get in the moment. Because once you realize the cost of testing is free, well, why would you over engineer something or over analyze something? You do the least that you can, test and then iterate, because the iterations are fast. And this pattern also shows up in the difference between hardware development and software development, right? And so in software development, the process of building software is free. Like now we do these things called continuous integration.
Yeah.
Whereas in hardware, the build process itself is very expensive because you have to acquire all the parts. It takes a bunch of time. You have to put them together. Sometimes they don't fit. Sometimes you have the print wrong. You can do all of these things just to get a build so you can go test it. And it used to be the case like that in software. In the 80s, I think Windows took about a week to build. So Windows, they ran this cadence where everybody would check everything in, and then it would take them a week to get all the issues ironed out, and finally they'd have a build that they could go test. And at some point, they started to get to daily builds, and I think this was in the 90s and early 2000s. And now it's, every time a software engineer writes something, they can check it in, have it compiled, and test it instantly, and you get your bugs before it makes its way into the main code base within minutes of you writing the code.
Hopefully.
So, yeah. So that's what this spreadsheet did, and I just didn't know it. And for folks that don't have a model like that, and now I hear that companies that have AI systems that are building, a lot of AI companies are starting to build these models so that companies can do pricing by simulating the audience, which will certainly help them get 80-90% of the way there before they actually release it to the market.
I love it. And for what it's worth, I'm obsessed with value pricing. And okay, I'm a recovering nerd. I'm trying to be less excited about numbers, more excited about the people. But the aha moment I had was, and engineers are probably equally guilty of this, but I'm an academic nerd. I'll chase down an idea just for the joy of chasing it down. And then I'll build something in a vacuum and I'll look at it and go, oh my God, this is beautiful. And then I launch it to the world and everybody goes, what the hell is that? And I think with pricing, you need to test it and get that feedback, right?
Absolutely, yes.
So I love that. Now, you've done some MIT. Now, let's talk about robotics because that is a big field. And I'm in the oil field in Alberta. We are the heart of Alberta's oil economy. And I'm guessing there's a lot of antiquated equipment. And as you said, it was cutting edge at some point. But we've got extreme climate, we've got extreme heat, extreme cold, extreme dust. We have a lot of forest fires. I'm guessing your solution would be very helpful in the oil patch.
Yes. As a matter of fact, our first commercial customer is in the oil and gas sector. We're helping a company upgrade their natural gas pumps that are used for vapor recovery at oil wells. And they have a hydraulic-based system, and the system fouls up every 3 months. And we can get them to at least 3x durability. But more importantly, we can tell them before our systems need service that they need service. So when they're out servicing one unit, they can service a nearby unit that says, hey, I'm going to need service in the next week or so. So go ahead.
I love that concept because growing up in and around the oil patch, a lot of this stuff is remote and you don't want to get to the site and find out something failed yesterday. It's good to know something's going to fail tomorrow and we've got time to fix it. Is that a fair comment?
Absolutely. I mean, and in fact, we've had a lot of interest from companies in Alberta that have hydraulic equipment that they want to replace. That interest has disappeared due to the tension between the two countries.
Sorry.
No, I don't think you should be apologizing. But
once that apologize, it's just our thing.
Well, once the tension is resolved, we hope to get those customers back. But because of the tension, the interest has disappeared. And so we're working in West Texas, and I'm sure this is true in Canada as well, that a lot of these systems are getting upgraded with continuous monitoring equipment. So you know when it fails, but still, when you know it fails, you're still maybe a day away getting to the equipment, maybe a day and a half. And during that time, you're not producing. I mean, you have revenue loss, which is, forget the cost of servicing it, but every day you're losing 3% of your revenues. And many businesses run on like a 20% margin. And so 3% of your revenues means you've lost a sixth of your profit. It's a big problem. Yeah.
I love that. So I look forward to the days the borders reopen and you can come up and visit. I'll take you on a tour. But I'm fascinated. My childhood, I was obsessed. We had a pump jack in my teen years. We had a pump jack in our yard area. And I always found it ironic that the darn thing squeaked. It was like, could somebody put some oil on that thing? So I'm all about how robotics. So you're working with more electronic actuators. Is that the right word for it?
Yes. Yeah, they're electronic in the sense that these systems are self-contained. And so they have the electronic controls built into our actuators so that your interface at the top level, instead of being, two hydraulic hoses, is power and CAN bus.
Oh, very cool.
So you just send it electricity, and then if you need more power, you just send a higher voltage, and we'll make sure there's a higher voltage motor in there. And if you have the right insulation, there's no problem. It's not going to burst like a hydraulic hose if you increase the pressure.
Yeah, coming to site and there's a hose swirling around. It's always dangerous. I love it. Now, let's talk about the business of robotics. So at the beginning, you said you quoted a number and it escaped me. I want to say 750 billion or something.
That's correct.
So it's amazing to me. Like if you think about, when I think hydraulics, I immediately go to farm equipment, but I'm going to guess that that's just the tip of the iceberg. Aside from oil and gas, what industries are most dependent on hydraulics right now?
Yeah, so the big three are construction, agriculture, and mining. And those are where most of the mobile hydraulics are. So if you think about the 750 billion total spend in the hydraulic space, about 600 is in mobile hydraulics, and about 150 billion is in industrial hydraulics, like oil and gas and production and so on. So those are installed at a location, non-mobile systems. And we have been, so one of the things, startups have to do is optimize for product market fit.
Yeah.
Now, hydraulics is a big market with a lot of verticals. And so I've got two variables to work with. I've got the engineering effort I'm putting in and the feature set we need to be successful, but I also have this other variable, which is what customer are we going to pick? And so by picking the right customer, I can optimize the amount of engineering effort we're putting in. And so even though construction is a huge market, it's also the market where the equipment gets abused a lot. Well, maybe mining is second or right up there because you've got jam-packed areas and you've got rocks everywhere. So, but construction equipment certainly is getting abused a lot. And so what that means is the qualification process and the testing and so on requires a lot of engineering and engineering rigor and testing and data and so on. And we can certainly do all of that. But oil and gas doesn't require us to do all of that right now. And so we can get customers right now. So that's one piece of it. The second piece of the puzzle is that in a production environment or a manufacturing environment, everyone's producing, but in a manufacturing environment like oil and gas, the systems are running 24/7. So any advantages we provide in efficiency, in durability, in speed are multiplied as opposed to construction equipment, which I would say best case, unless they're running multiple shifts, is operating maybe 6 hours a day.
Yeah.
Right? So 4 hours, 3 hours lunch shift, 3 hours and some downtime, what have you. So if it's running 6 hours versus oil and gas, which is running 4 times as much, then for the same value, an oil and gas customer would be willing to pay 4 times as much, right? And so that makes it possible for us as a startup to launch with, even though our costs are higher, in a sector where we can still get margins that take the business to the next step, and then we can tackle the next market, which is agriculture or mining or construction. You got to build as you go. Yeah.
For what it's worth, I could nerd out about the tech piece, but I want to underline the business logic that you just shared, because honestly, this is one of my big rants. When somebody comes to me and says, we serve everyone and we do everything, I know with certainty that they're not succeeding and they're trying to help everyone and they're not. I love the startup energy that you need to know where your leveraged wins are. So I just want to underline that because that's sadly missing in a lot of startups.
That's right. So one of them is, of course, a sector, like what sectors are easier, where the problem is easier. And then just at a macro level, as I described, you can see the gains are there. But then at the micro level, you also want in that sector to find someone that A, has money, B, is willing to move fast, and C, has an immediate pain point that you can address. And so our current customer is somebody that's a mid-market, right? So they're not a huge player that will move, that has a lot of money, but will take years to make a decision.
Yeah.
And they're not a tiny player that's trying to do something innovative, but really doesn't have any money to buy our stuff and, is looking to borrow equipment and so on and so on. We don't want to be working with those folks. So that's why a lot of startups in general look at mid-market, right? Folks that want to transform their business, have money, and can move in a reasonable time frame. And then, of course, with this particular customer, there's this specific pain point where their service team is a certain size, and they really can't grow the service team because it's hard to find blue-collar workers because of the demographic shifts that are happening. And so they're stuck with the service team that they have. And by using our technology, they can triple their service revenues, because if our systems last 3 times as long as our hydraulic system for the same team, they can service 3 times as many wells.
Yeah. I love the math of that. And it's also, there's a bit of psychology. Now, you are going through, you're looking for investors. You mentioned crowdfunding. Tell me a little bit about that path and why you chose crowdfunding over traditional venture capitalists.
Yeah, so it just happens to be the stage at which I joined Rise Robotics. There were a few things, as a leader, you come into an organization and you got to look at the cards you're dealt, right? And what are your trump cards? What are the cards you have to get rid of, and so on. So certainly there was some portfolio rebalancing I had to do, but then I also had to find ways to scale the business and grow the business and keep bringing in money. And the three sources or four sources of money typically are family offices and angels, corporate venture arms, and then financial VCs. And most financial VCs at the time had these other deals, AI deals that they were chasing, humanoid robot deals that they were chasing. And they were willing to give me money, but not at great terms. And the company didn't at that time, when I joined, have a commercial product that we could ship. So the corporate venture folks were like, well, you've got to have our R&D teams bought into what you're building before we can make an investment. So we had to make sure that there was a commercial product for sale. So that the time wasn't right for that. And then family offices and angels were kind of next. We also had 1,500 followers on LinkedIn. And some of those followers had told us when they visited our facility, either as suppliers or as potential customers, that they personally wanted to invest in the business, but we had no way to get them to invest in the business. So I had both a problem and a solution. And so we decided to look at crowdfunding. And in the United States, there's this law that was passed in the Obama administration by the SEC called Reg CF, and it allows startups with a certain amount of financial due diligence to raise up to $5 million. And so we opened up a round last year. We had $5.7 million of interest, 15% over the maximum we could take. And so we had to close the round, and we've just opened another round to give those people that were interested but couldn't get in the previous round to get back into this round. And it's been exciting because the process of getting the word out that we're doing this crowdfunding has had a lot of synergy with the process of getting the word out that we're looking for customers. And so we found when we go to trade shows that, an interview I did on a podcast to talk about the crowdfunding ended up getting someone convinced about the technology we were building, and they came to see us at a trade show, wanted to know more, and then we started some conversations. So it's been synergistic. I did not expect that in the B2B space. I thought that the efforts we did towards crowdfunding wouldn't have any customer impact, but I was surprised that there was synergy.
I love that. And for what it's worth, I forget the name. I want to call it the Global Energy Show, but there's a massive trade show that comes to Calgary occasionally. I don't think it's every year. It's like every other year. I can't remember the cadence, but billions of dollars flow through that vendor hall. And for the record, nobody's there to hear anybody speak. It's all of the people are there to do deals and to connect. And it's amazing because the royalty of the oil patch always comes through. And, when I was younger, I used to go just to see all of the equipment, and, it's because not the little vendor hall with little tiny booths. It's, you got your big equipment in there and everybody's showing off their latest toys. But I believe in the power of relationships and connections, because for me personally, I'd rather have an investor who believes in what I'm doing than somebody who's putting me in a portfolio. And, one of my pet peeves with the VCs is they expect only 10% will become unicorns and take off. The other 90% are more or less risk buffers and disposable. So I want somebody who's bought into the vision. So what's the future look like for you at Rise? What's the vision that you guys are raising money for and hoping to get to?
Yeah, so we have three business areas. One of our business areas is the Pentagon. So we predominantly there work on funded work. And we've sold about $1.5 million worth of product to the Air Force. And most recently, we won a $3 million contract extension to help build them a hydraulic-free munitions loader. And before I joined, we were only working with the Air Force. Last year, we added the Army as a customer, very small contract. And then this year we found a champion in the Navy. So we're expanding our defense footprint. There's certainly a lot of hydraulics used on ships, on ground equipment that has to get upgraded because of the maintenance challenges of it. So there's a huge opportunity there, and it's all funded development. So it's non-dilutive funding for us. On the commercial side of the business, we have two different business areas. One is components. So there we're working with OEMs that have a hydraulic system and then they would like to replace it or upgrade it. We're also starting to partner with companies that make screw type linear actuators because we are actually in a very different performance space than they are. So most screw type actuators, go up to 2 to 3 tons, roughly 18 to 24 inches in stroke, few hundred millimeters in speed per second. And our systems go up to 2 meters per second in stroke speed. They go up to 10 feet, 3 meters, no problem in stroke length. And I'm trying to think of the third. So it's speed and forces. We start at 2 tons and we can go all the way up to 40 tons and then we can parallel very easily. So when we talk to companies that are building screw type actuators, we see them as partners. We see them as opportunities for them to grow their business and for us to grow our business. So we're starting to talk to those folks. But on the OEM side, I'm focused on, as we discussed, mid-market OEMs that are nimble and have a pain point. And we want to grow our components business and build out a components catalog. Our cylinder can push and pull. We can have the head of the cylinder on either end, and we can have the cylinder work as a steering cylinder if needed. So we have that flexibility just like a hydraulic system. And as I mentioned, the size class is 2 to 40 tons, and then we can parallel as many as needed because they're very precise. And then finally, we have our liftgate business. And there we're partnering with a company called Anthony Liftgates. We white label their product, and we're bringing that to market, and that's in pilots right now. And what's interesting about this product and this business is that it's a recurring revenue business. 15% of lift gates in large fleets get replaced every year because of wear and tear. And so once we acquire a customer, we essentially have them for life. That's like building a software business, like a SaaS business, right?
That's the dream, right?
Yes, that used to be the dream for investors before AI came along, and all of their SaaS businesses now have competition overnight because the AI systems are rewriting the code for free.
The good news is I think there's going to be ample opportunity for the people who fix the security breaches caused by AI and vibe coding, because I think too many people are too confident. It's like giving me access to your garage. I'd build something, but odds are it would probably explode when it put into production.
Yeah, and that I also used to think that like 4 weeks ago, I was like, this code will have all kinds of bugs. Well, I just read 2 weeks ago that a couple of the open source projects ran a Claude tool to find security bugs, and it found security bugs at a tremendous pace, and folks didn't think that they had that many bugs, and the AI system found them. So there's obviously new kinds of security bugs that will get introduced. But as long as you're able to train the AI system on the kinds of security bugs to avoid, it can find those for you. So I think there's something there. I don't know exactly what, where it can be a tool if used well, and if used inappropriately, it can cause you all kinds of problems.
Well, I say it's kind of like having access to nuclear launch codes. Just because I can launch doesn't mean I should. and again, it's launching without knowing the consequences. I'm seeing a lot of startups wiped out because they didn't put enough fences around. And when they ran their new precious little toy, it deleted their main database, which, if your business runs on data, you don't want to give the tools too much access too soon.
Oh, yes. Yeah, there are certainly those cases where you're using these esoteric tools. But they're also like more ordinary situations where startups went out of business because they didn't realize how much computation they were using on AWS. And when they got the bill, they're like, oh, well, we have to close the doors now because we didn't think about how much training CPU we were consuming and trying to build our startup. And this first bill has put us in bankruptcy.
Well, it's funny because early on I warned people about that. Sorry, I'm a bit of a generative AI and AI in general nerd, but I warn people, put limits on things, and they're like, no, it's fine. And it's like, you get one $80,000 bill from your provider, you're going to rethink your entire funding model.
That's right.
For the next year.
That's right. Yeah.
And it makes investors nervous when you say, oops, we didn't know what we were doing and we burnt your cash. Sorry, can we have more?
Yeah, that does not go over well. Yeah. Surprises like that now. Yeah.
Now, you are part of the Lighthouse family, and you're absolutely a delight to talk to. What kind of investors are you hoping to bring in for crowdfunding? Because I think, honestly, I would see a very unique type of investor, not your average, counting their pennies and hoping to cover inflation. They're probably betting on the future. Is that fair?
I'd say so. We have all kinds of investors. So folks can invest as little as $250 to own a piece of the company, right? So it's like, hey, I want to take if people are interested in just doing it for fun, they can, right? So there's definitely folks like that. And then there are folks who are value investors, right? Value, I don't mean values investors, right? So they feel like because we're a clean tech company, we're a climate tech company, they want to see, a reduction in emissions and so on and so forth. So there are folks that are interested in investing in that, and they're willing to put in their money. And if the company does well, that's great. If it doesn't do well, they at least move the needle on something, right? That's going to make an impact on the climate. And we've got folks that have experience with hydraulics. So we've got folks in the armed services that have used hydraulic systems, and they've seen how difficult it can be and not having the right equipment and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
And then we have professionals that look at the market opportunity, and they're thinking like VCs, right? Which is, if you have a big market, a 750 billion market, you have many opportunities to pivot and change your business and find something that's successful. Versus if you start in a small market and you're trying to be successful, if your idea doesn't work, it just doesn't work. So I had the luxury, as I mentioned, of the team here when I joined was really excited about construction, big boy toys. Like we'd like to work on excavators and cranes and bulldozers and dump trucks, right? That would be so much fun. But rather than just stay focused on that, we just expanded our aperture, and we found a different segment that's an easier segment to do. And it's possible that we might find someone else that's yet easier. Like, for example, someone that's in the medical space, medical manufacturing space, will say, hey, a drop of hydraulic oil ruins my entire batch. I need you guys I need you yesterday. So they're in a $750 billion market. There are all of these ways in which we can be successful. So there are folks that are investing there. And then we've had this company called King's Crowd. They rate crowdfunding campaigns across all sectors, and they cover all of them. They gave us a 4.8 star rating out of 5 this year. And some of the things that they looked at was the size of the market, the kind of deal we're offering. We're offering a deal that's very similar to what an institutional investor would get. So they see that, and so they made an investment. So yeah, it's a wide range of folks. Unfortunately, for folks in Canada, I don't think you're allowed to invest in US crowdfunding campaigns unless you are an accredited investor, in which case you can.
Right.
So we have a lot of investors who are not accredited. Our average check size is $2,000. Our median check size is $500. And we have folks that write $100,000 checks as well. So it's all over the place.
I love it. The nerd in me is wondering how much I got to invest to get an invite to the AGM. So
the AGM? What is that?
Annual general meeting. Sorry, that's a Warren Buffett thing. People used to buy stocks just to get to go to his annual event because he'd teach about what his philosophy was in investing at the meeting. So,
okay. Well, if you buy one share, or if you put in the minimum I don't know, I think that's more than one share, but if you put in the minimum amount, you'll get invited to our Guinness World Record party. So,
excellent.
So last year, we broke the Guinness World Record, or set the Guinness World Record, for building the world's strongest robotic arm prototype. This is a munitions loader that I was talking about, that we built for the Air Force. And it was just a prototype, and so that's why the record says prototype on it. But we lifted 7,000 pounds at a 7-foot extension, and and that's the 7,000 pounds is about the weight of a Ford F-150 Lightning truck or Tesla Cybertruck. So we picked it and we just kind of moved it around, right, just like it was a rag doll.
Yeah.
And the test, of course, was not as casual. Like we had a third-party testing firm come in. They took evidence. We had to get a local policeman to come witness the test, and we had to send all of that information with the video evidence over to the Guinness World Record team. Then they sent an adjudicator. So it's a whole process. So the arm was supposed to do 7,000 pounds, and we picked up 7,000 pounds, and that's fine. And after that, engineers told me, "Hey, we have a safety factor on that thing. We could have lifted a lot more." I was like, "Well,
for next attempt, right?"
That's right. So we're going to do another attempt, and that's going to be next year. We haven't announced any of this stuff, so but the requirement is that we have to be able to demonstrate that we're at least lifting twice as much. So we'll be lifting 14,000 pounds.
I love it. That is huge.
And we'll be bringing the Guinness World Record team back. We'll break our own record for the second time.
Love that flex. And by the way, I don't know if this is in the works, but I can't wait to see your guys' equipment standard at NASA with all of their projects up in space. I feel like there's got to be some hydraulics up there, right?
Yes. Do you mean so are you talking specifically in space or ground equipment that's powering space equipment?
Either or.
Yeah. So again, this is where the
NASA worthy is what I'm saying. So
this is where the nerd part of me and the business part of me have a lot of tension, right? Because the nerd's like, oh, how cool would it be to get one of our actuators on the moon, right?
Yeah.
And then the nerd part of me says, oh, that's going to take 10 years of qualification, and I can like triple my market share in oil and gas. So where should I put my engineering chips?
Yeah.
Right. Let's see. So anyway, that's the issue. Now, if NASA is willing to pay us for development, that's different. If they want to put skin in the game, just like the Air Forces, we'll definitely say yes. And we'll get a team that's jazzed to work on that project.
Well, for what it's worth, 1 in 4 of the Artemis crew was Canadian. So, maybe we get a vote in that. I don't know.
I hope so. I hope you get a vote. Making because NASA funds everything else, so we wouldn't do something out of the goodness of our hearts, and certainly wouldn't be a good use of investor money to bet on a NASA mission. That's 4, 5, 6 years out. There could be a change in presidents. Just who knows? Policy can change and so on. So investor money has to go in, at least for me, to things that we can get in market in 2 years or less.
It honestly feels more like a SpaceX play, anyways, because Elon's willing to throw money at his Mars mission. So there you go. Well,
that's right.
Hiten, I could talk to you all day, and I restrained myself from talking about that shop behind you because that's kind of my version of heaven. I'd be out there playing if I could. I want to thank you for being on the show. Where can people go to connect with you, learn more about you, Rise, the crowdfunding?
Yeah, so our website is riserobotics.com, and they can find us, that's just one word, and they can find us on LinkedIn, and they can find me on LinkedIn and send me a link to connect. I'm happy to do that. And if they go to our website, there's an invest button, and they can click on that link, and it'll take them to kind of the offering page, which describes what we're doing, how we're doing it, and why we're interesting. There's also on that page memos written by Kingscrowd and a couple of other VCs that describe both the opportunity and the risk. So they're kind of an independent read on the opportunities. So folks should understand the risks of investing in early stage companies. And for our next episode, why don't we do a tour of the shop?
Oh, that would be delightful. And yes, Nerds Unite. Well, thank you so much. It was great to meet you, and welcome to the Lighthouse family.
Thank you, Jeff. This was a pleasure.